Tallahassee, Hurricane Ian continued its wobbly path toward Florida, with the Sarasota-Charlotte County line now looming as a likely landfall site Wednesday night. Gov. The city of Venice in Sarasota was earlier projected as the Category 3 hurricane likely location for touching the Florida mainland, but the trajectory is now taking the storm packing 120 meters (p.h.) winds a bit further south, according to the National Hurricane Center. "This thing's the real deal," DeSantis said Tuesday evening at the state's Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee. "It's a major storm. Some 2.5 million Floridians are under evacuation orders along the west coast, more than 1/10 of the state's population. 56 counties now have announced school closures as Ian approaches. Tolls have been lifted on roadways in the evacuation counties, with the covered area now expanded into much of central Florida." State officials said they haven't heard problems from evacuees finding no hotel space along their routes. Weather Channel announces Jim Cantore's location. Potential path of Ian. Hurricane Ian. See spaghetti models, path and storm activity for Florida. 11:45 p.m. FPL CEO. Expect power outages, even for several days. Florida Power and Light, the state's largest utility serving more than 12 million people, said customers should anticipate outages, even potentially prolonged ones lasting between 12 and 24 hours or several days, depending on the strength and speed of Hurricane Ian, FPL CEO Eric Silagy told reporters on Tuesday. FPL has deployed nearly 16,000 men and women, including help from 27 states, to restore power to the service area impacted by feeder bands from this dangerous, damaging and slow-moving storm, Silagy said. He added that FPL's investment of several $100 million in storm hardening has improved restoration times, but that there is no such thing as a hurricane-proof electrical grid. 11:30 p.m. Wind, rain slammed Florida Keys late Tuesday. Tropical storm force wind and rain were pelting the Florida Keys late Tuesday as Hurricane Ian advanced on the state, with tornadoes likely overnight. Gov. Ron DeSantis and other officials said in an 11 p.m. briefing at the state's Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee. The hurricane, which caused widespread damage and flooding while crossing western Cuba, is expected to make landfall in southwest Florida possibly as a powerful, Category 4 storm Wednesday evening, with winds topping 130 meters p.h. Power outages were already occurring in the Keys and South Florida, but officials said that while severe winds will rock coastal communities from Sarasota to Fort Myers, 10 to 12-foot storm surge and flooding was certain to bring damage not just to the coast, but also to central Florida inland counties as Ian carves a path across the state, likely downgrading in strength to a tropical storm. It is expected to exit the state Friday near Volusia County on the Atlantic coast. "This is a lot of nasty weather that we're in store for over the next few days," DeSantis said. 10:30 p.m. Storm will slow, linger over Florida for a long time. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell, speaking at a White House briefing, said the storm will make landfall somewhere between Tampa and Fort Myers. "The entire state will be affected, and everyone needs to stay focused," she said. By the time Ian reaches Florida, the storm will slow to about 5 miles per hour, which means storm surge is the biggest concern, she said. "This is significant because what this means is that Floridians are going to experience the impacts of this storm for a very long time," she said. 9:50 p.m. Biden, DeSantis discuss Ian preparation. President Joe Biden and Gov. Ron DeSantis communicated with each other late Tuesday, with Hurricane Ian fast approaching Florida, according to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. President Biden spoke this evening with Governor DeSantis of Florida to discuss the steps the federal government is taking to help Florida prepare for Hurricane Ian. "The president and the governor committed to continued close coordination," tweeted Jean-Pierre. The call occurred between the two at 6:30 p.m., according to the governor's schedule. The president had previously spoken to the mayors of Tampa, St. Petersburg and Clearwater about the storm. Federal Emergency Management Agency Administrator Deanne Criswell said she and DeSantis had spoken last Friday. Criswell said Biden is very focused on making sure Florida has the resources it needs. Charlotte County woman rides out Ian at a shelter. Among the 2.5 million Floridians under mandatory or voluntary evacuation orders from local officials is Charlotte County resident Connie Gosselin. She told CNN Tuesday this was her first hurricane and that she felt safer riding out the storm in a local shelter instead of her home. "I've never been in a hurricane," said Gosselin. "This is my first time and my first time at a shelter, but I feel better here than if I would all alone at home." Charlotte County emergency management officials issued evacuation orders early Tuesday for local residents that includes those living on the barrier islands of Don Pedro Island, Knight Island, Palm Island, Little Gasparilla Island, and Minnesota Key, along with those residing in mobile homes and trailers. Ron DeSantis to hold briefing on Ian late Tuesday. Ron DeSantis is scheduled to hold a 5:30 p.m. press conference regarding Hurricane Ian this afternoon at the State Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee. It's the third briefing he's held with reporters on Tuesday as Hurricane Ian gains strength and closes in on Florida. He will be joined by Florida Division of Emergency Management Director Kevin Guthrie, Florida Department of Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue and National Guard Major General James O. Eifert. 4:55 p.m. Florida activates toll-free hotline for Ian-related info. Top Florida emergency officials said they activated the State Assistance Information Line or SAIL to provide an additional resource for Floridians to receive up-to-date information regarding Hurricane Ian. Florida's main disaster assistance center for information is its www.floridadisaster.org. 2:30 p.m. Disney World, Busch Gardens announced closures ahead of Hurricane Ian's arrival in Florida. As Hurricane Ian churns closer to the U.S., Florida's theme parks are hurriedly preparing for its arrival. Busch Gardens Tampa Bay is just miles from the stretch of Florida's Gulf Coast where Ian is expected to make landfall. It was the first park to shutter ahead of the storm. Legoland Florida also will close. Precautionary measures are underway elsewhere, including at Walt Disney World, which announced several closures. "Everything revolves around the safety of our guests and team members," Universal Orlando Resort said in a statement to USA Today. Here's how Florida's biggest theme parks are preparing for Hurricane Ian. 2 p.m. Biden to Florida. With you every step of the way. President Biden on Tuesday sought to reassure millions of Florida residents in the path of Hurricane Ian that federal emergency management officials are on the ground and ready to assist the state before, during and after the dangerous storm strikes the state. Biden, speaking from the White House Rose Garden, said he spoke by telephone with the mayors of Tampa, St. Petersburg and Clearwater. "I told each one of them that whatever they need, contact me directly and they know how to do that," he said. "I have a lot of personnel down there already. We're here to support them in every way we can." Biden also urged Floridians to obey instructions of state and local officials to evacuate when ordered. "Your safety is more important than anything," he said. "I know our hearts are with everyone who will feel the effects of this storm and will be with you every step of the way." 1:50 p.m. Top FEMA officials preparing for Ian. At an afternoon White House briefing with reporters, Federal Emergency Management Agency Administrator Deanne Criswell said her agency and Florida officials were working very closely together in preparation for the storm. Criswell said she spoke with DeSantis on Friday, as directed by Biden, and that the federal government had a strong team working side by side with the governor and his staff that would continue to engage with him. She said that Gracia Bishek, regional administrator for FEMA Region 4, is traveling with the governor to a few areas Tuesday to make sure they understand their emergency response needs. "I think the communication we have had with the state officials has been excellent," Criswell said. 11 a.m. Cape Coral Mayor John Gunter. Ian's storm surge could bring catastrophic possibilities. Cape Coral Mayor John Gunter, whose southwest Florida city has miles and miles of canals, said predictions of 5 to 10 feet of storm surge could be catastrophic in some areas. "We cannot take this storm for granted," he told CNN on Tuesday. "This is a major hurricane with some catastrophic possibilities for our community. We are preparing for the worst and hoping for the best," he said. Cape Coral is in Lee County, where local officials Tuesday morning ordered the mandatory evacuation of people in low-lying areas and those most at risk from expected flooding due to storm surge created by the advance of Hurricane Ian. 10:45 a.m. Florida National Guard ready to be deployed. The state has 5,000 Florida National Guard members in place to assist with the storm and its aftermath. Another 28,000 utility personnel also have been deployed in Florida to help with power restoration, DeSantis said. Guthrie said potential power outages can be expected statewide. He also said those looking to leave the storm's path may not have to go far. "Many people in the southwest Florida area, your best bet is going to be evacuate across the state," Guthrie said. "Just go straight across the state to Broward, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach." 10:30 a.m. Power outages expected across Florida. Florida Emergency Management Director Kevin Guthrie said Tuesday that potential power outages can be expected statewide. He also said those looking to leave the storm's path may not have to go far. Many people in the southwest Florida area, your best bet is going to be evacuate across the state, Guthrie said. Just go straight across the state to Broward, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach. 10 a.m., Hurricane Ian tracker targets Tampa, St. Pete. Tampa and St. Petersburg appear to be among the most likely targets for a direct hit, their first by a major hurricane since 1921. Ian was forecast to emerge over the southeastern Gulf of Mexico on Tuesday and approach the west coast of Florida Wednesday and Wednesday night. The storm is predicted to slow during this period, the National Hurricane Center warned in an advisory. This would likely prolong the storm surge, wind and rainfall impacts along the affected portions of the west coast of Florida, the advisory says. 9:45 a.m. Senator Marco Rubio. Ian storm surge worst possible storm scenario. Senator Marco Rubio recalls a meeting years ago at the National Hurricane Center and asking the expert weather forecasters about Florida's worst possible storm scenario, and was told it would be a powerful hurricane that stalls off the coast and triggers a massive storm surge. They described basically what we're facing right now, Rubio told Fox News host Sean Hannity on Monday night. Hurricane Ian is expected to plow across Cuba Tuesday before emerging in the relatively warm Gulf of Mexico, where some models call for it to stall for upwards of a day before the eye moves onto land. It doesn't even have to make landfall over Florida, just stalls off the coast and pushes a bunch of water into the Tampa Bay region and into the western part of the state, said Rubio said. That's what we're facing now, potentially the worst-case scenario in terms of storm surge. The only way to avoid dying in that is to leave when they tell you to leave, he said. They're not just arbitrarily telling you to leave. Authorities know the areas that are most vulnerable to this. 7 a.m. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to update Florida on Hurricane Ian at 9 a.m. Ron DeSantis is scheduled to hold a press conference regarding Hurricane Ian this morning at the State Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee. Hurricane Ian made landfall in Cuba as a Category 3 storm and could hit Florida's west coast as a Category 4 hurricane as early as Wednesday. Watch a live stream of the video here, which is expected to start at 9 a.m.